1987 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you back the memories of Grand Prairie and bringing you up to date on some of the important families. This is history tape number 51, number 51, and we're so pleased to have two very old name families from Grand Prairie, Texas. We're going to talk with the Easons and the Cole descendants today. And we're so pleased to welcome Maureen Eason Ford. Welcome, Maureen.
Good to be here.
Thank you. And next we have as our middle guest, Esther Cole Eason. And both of them and their families have been very important to the history of Grand Prairie, Texas. And we're going to start out, of course, with Esther. And Esther, we'd like for you to look out into your camera and tell us about the Coles in Grand Prairie and the Lancaster area, and about your parents and their names, both your mother's maiden name and your father's full name. Would you look out and give us that genealogy, please?
Yes, my father's name was J.I., and he was nicknamed Pete. So the cousins all called him Uncle Pete. And my mother's name was Barbara. Her maiden name was Barbara Margaret Lenore, and she was dubbed Aunt Mag by the cousins and relatives. And they lived in the Lancaster area. Was born and reared there. And my mother and dad moved to Grand Prairie in the early 1900s, and my older sister Ruth was born here, and I don't know how many years they lived here, not very many. Then they moved back to Lancaster, Texas.
Yes.
And I was born there, and my younger sister Willie Estelle was born there, and they moved back to Grand Prairie. And that was still in the early 1900s. And we lived here ever since. And mother and father have passed on. And I'm the only member of the family left. I had two sisters, Ruth and Willie Estelle, as I mentioned.
All right. Now, Esther, you mentioned them living in Lancaster, moving to Grand Prairie, back to Lancaster, and then back to Grand Prairie. Where did they settle in Grand Prairie? Give us the geographic area.
In the beginning, they lived down near Idlewild. I'm not sure just the location.
All right.
And then when they came back, we moved to this mountain creek, near Mountain Creek, on a farm. Mm-hmm. And my dad farmed and raised pretty horses. And he and another fella broke these horses to ride. Mm-hmm. Broke them to ride. And we lived there until, just before the lake started, started to build a lake. Mm-hmm. We had beautiful pasture land, several hundred acres, and Mountain Creek ran right through that acreage where the horses were.
Oh, that is wonderful.
And that's the history of my growing up.
All right. Now, while you were growing up on the farm, there were 3 girls and no boys. Mm-hmm. Who helped Dad with the farm work and all of these good things.
Well, I was kind of the tomboy of the family.
Good.
And I ran a cultivator. I plowed on a cultivator.
Did you?
Once.
All right. And the cultivator was, of course, pulled by horses, but
Yes.
since your dad raised these horses, well, did you and the girls ever ride these horses out of the lake
Yes, I
pasture?
had a little experience. We had a little mule named Pet, and I loved to ride Pet. So one day, I was just past the gate in the pasture, just riding around, not too far in, and Pet run under a limb, and off I went.
And left you out in the pasture.
Left me lying on the ground.
Oh, that
But
was
she was a gentle little mule, and she was really a pet.
Well, living out there in the country, did you go to school from out in the country and maybe ride a school bus or ride a horse to school?
No
Tell us
school
about that.
buses. My mother took us early when we first started to school. She took us to school in this buggy, horse and buggy, and then she'd pick us up in the afternoon. And we went to a little school out between Grand Prairie and Florence Hill.
Was it the little Hogwalla school?
Yes, that was it.
The little Hogwalla
We went to that school until I believe it was 3rd grade, I guess. And then we went to Grand Prairie School.
Then to the Grand Prairie School. And when you were in the Grand Prairie School, can you remember any of the principal or the teacher or the superintendent or any good names like that when you were going to school? Just one name you could pull out, maybe?
Miss Brimer.
Miss Brimer. She must have been your favorite.
She was a good teacher. She was an English teacher. She was real good. Yes, I remember her. And my oldest sister made a seamstress, and my sister and I went to business college in Dallas.
Wonderful.
I went to Drones, and she went to Metropolitan.
All right.
And that was our education. Then we went to work.
And that was splendid. And where did you go to work then?
I worked for a while in a little office in a broom factory here. And then later on, I went to work for Walter H. Allen, a wholesale hardware in Dallas. And I worked for them for 25 years.
All right. Now, how did you get from Grand Prairie, Texas to Walter Allen's Hardware in Dallas?
Well, let's back up just a little.
All right.
I got to Dallas to go to business college on Interurban.
You went on
You
the
don't remember
Interurban.
the Interurban, do you?
No, I don't.
Oh, I remember the Interurban, and you rode that to Dallas.
We rode the Interurban back and forth.
Uh-huh. And then how would you get from the Interurban station here in Grand Prairie
Out there, a horse and buggy.
in a horse and buggy?
They always had to come pick us up. No cars then for us. Later we graduated to a car, you know, but after our school years.
That was so exciting. Now,
Well, we walked to school
And-
from out there some.
all right, now we have your 3 sisters' names and your parents' names. Do you know where their parents migrated from? Any of them, either on your mother or your daddy's side in the Cole family? Your mother's name, of course, was Barber. Do you know where the Barbers came from? Maybe from England or?
Years back there, England.
Yes.
England, Ireland.
All right.
England, Ireland.
All right. Now the Coles. Do you know where they
Now
came
I believe Tennessee.
from? Believe Tennessee. And-
One of the eastern states back there.
All right, all right. Now, tell us about your meeting your Mr. Eason. That's going to be very important to our history.
Well, I met Tom at parties.
All right.
And he was living then over near where the golf course was or is.
Alright.
And I don't know how long we went together, a year or so, and then we were married in 1925.
1925 was the good year, wasn't it?
Yes.
And did you all have any children?
No.
You did not have any children. And Mr. Tom, tell us what he did for a living.
Tom, when we first married, he worked at Ford Motor Company.
All right.
Then he was in the service. You know,
What part of the service?
Air and Field in the Air Corps.
In the Air Corps, all right.
And then when he came back, he built a service station, and he worked from then on in that service station, Sinclair Service Station,
All right.
in East Grand Prairie.
All right.
And those lots, I still have those lots.
What are the lot and block number in Grand Prairie? Is it on Main?
701.
701 Main Street.
East Main.
East Main. Isn't that exciting?
Right where the savings and loan, it used to be, but it's independent now. Independent savings and loan.
Right in there near the First City National Bank.
What was it? Citizens.
Citizens.
Citizens
Yeah, it used to be.
Citizens. That's where it is.
All right.
And he was still there when he died.
All right. Can you
Still
give
there.
us his death year, the year that he died, that Mr. Tom
Yes,
died?
he died May the 20th, 1959.
1959, and he was very important in the town. I remember him as one of the leading towns people here in Grand Prairie when I was growing up as a young person. Can you tell us something that he was involved in, like the American Legion or anything, the downtown group, or?
He was a volunteer in the Grand Prairie Fire Department.
Wonderful.
25 years.
25 years for that. And anything else that you'd like to tell about Mr. Tom?
He belonged to the Masonic Lodge
All right.
Uh-huh.
All right.
for many years. He
All
belonged
right.
to the Masonic Lodge, and he was past master of this
Of the Sam R.
1031, Sam R. Hamilton.
All right. Now, do you all attend church in Grand Prairie, Texas?
Yes, Methodist, First Methodist.
First Methodist Church. That's wonderful. Now, we're going to let you rest just for a few minutes. We're going to come back if we have time and talk to you about all of the wonderful things you do in retirement, like your activities in the Woman's Club and some of the other things that you're involved in. But let's get to Maureen for just a minute.
Okay.
And you make some notes of some of the other things you'd like to tell us in a few minutes. Would you do that for us, Esther? Okay. Now let's talk with Maureen Eason Ford. And Maureen, as
not
a
hanging
long-time citizen of Grand Prairie, and we're not going to say how long because
That's all right.
I'm way on down the line
Okay.
ahead of you, but tell us a little bit about your family of the Eason part that's a little bit different from Esther's. Would you do
Okay. My mother and dad were John and Loki Eason. Now, Daddy had two brothers, which was Uncle Tom and R.A. Eason. Some people call him Raz. We call him Uncle Scooter.
Sam.
And well, I didn't know him, Aunt Esther. He died before I was born. These are the three I remember.
All
of
right.
Daddy.
All right, and
But
your dad's name was John?
John.
Did
John
he have-
Allen.
John Allen.
John Allen Eason was
All
my
right.
dad.
Give me
Uh-huh.
Loki's
Her
maiden name.
Mother's name was Loki Parker Eason.
Parker. That sounds
Now,
like a real
I
exciting
have
name.
to tell you that we are descendants of Quanah Parker, the Comanche chief.
How wonderful.
Yes. Mother's name was Loki, L-O-K-E-Y, which is a real Indian name.
Uh-huh. And where did they come from before coming to Grand Prairie? Do you know that?
I don't know where the Parkers came from. Was Daddy born in Lincoln? Was he born close here, Uncle Tom? Was Daddy born here too?
I'm not sure.
There-
No, yes.
the
Tom was
Easons.
born at Red Oak.
Okay, Daddy and Uncle Tom were both born then at Red Oak.
At Red Oak, Texas.
But the Easons originally came from Pulaski, Tennessee. Migrated here. My grandfather.
All
came.
right, and you've migrated back there and checked the area?
And we've checked the area out. There's an Eason Hardware, an Eason Service Station. But it was night when we were going through and we didn't have time to check it out.
All right. Now, Maureen, did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have two sisters.
Or name them, please, and
okay.
where they are if they're still living.
Anita was the oldest. She died in 1975.
All right.
Then I have Joan, better known as Jody, Eason Willingham, who lives here in Grand Prairie. And then me. There were the three girls.
And you were the
Just-
baby?
I was the baby.
Oh, and the pampered one, of course.
Well,
All
they
babies
said I
are.
was. Jody and
Yes.
Anita said I was.
All
but
right. And you then went to school here in Grand Prairie,
I started to school in the first grade downstairs in the old building and graduated upstairs just like you did, I bet.
Oh, yes. All right. Now, your dad, what did he do for a living?
Daddy was a broom maker.
He was a
He
broom
had his own broom shop.
How wonderful.
He made, for a while he worked at, if you remember the old
United
United
Broom.
Broom up on Main Street. He worked there. But for the most part, he had his own broom shop. During the war, he went to work at North American. He thought that was his
Duty.
to do that. Served as an air raid warden, loved it.
Oh, wonderful.
And like Uncle Tom, was always on the Grand Prairie Volunteer Fire Department.
That is just splendid.
But Daddy died in 1949.
1940.
49.
All right. Going to school in Grand Prairie, Texas was exciting then, wasn't it?
It was fun.
Could you
yeah.
name some of your wonderful teachers and the one you liked very best of all?
Oh, yeah. Miss Sadie Miller was my first grade teacher. I think she had thousands of first graders. L.A. Roberts was superintendent. When I started to school, gosh, I can't remember. My favorite teacher had to be Verena Hyde.
Verena Hyde of all.
She had to be Verena Hyde.
You know, she's been the favorite teacher of many people that have been on this history show.
She's a doll. She really is.
Okay.
But it was fun. We walked to school. We walked the railroad tracks. We lived on Crockett Street. Mother and Dad
Crockett.
lived there 62 years on Crockett Street. So we were all born there. And we just walked the railroad tracks to school and walked home.
Wonderful. All right, now tell us about your immediate family. I know you're married to Benton Ford, who has been really a stem winder in this town. Tell us about your immediate family and your children.
Okay,
your
I
Bentons.
married Benton the 4th of July, 1952. It's been 35 years plus.
That's a good one.
We have a daughter, Janice, Janice Cockrell, who is a licensed recording agent, runs our insurance company. She's also a social worker, married to a fine young man, Leslie Cockrell. Then we have our son, David, who is a lab manager for a chemical company. He is not married.
All right. Now, Janice and Leslie, do they have you any grandchildren?
No grandchildren.
No grandchildren?
No grandchildren.
You're not going to be a grandmother until you get way on up the line?
Way up the line.
Way on up the line. That's
That's right.
wonderful. All right. Now, Maureen, you mentioned your husband, Benton Ford. What do y'all do for a living? You mentioned that Janice works in your insurance company. Tell us about your business.
Benton is a tax consultant. That is his first love. In January, he started his this past January, he started his 40th year as a federal tax consultant. He loves it, and that is his life, is his income tax.
Now, do you work with him in the business?
I work with him during tax season. I leave on the 15th of April, and I get out. As an unpaid helper, I get out. He says I'm the most expensive employee he has.
Yes.
But I work during April, until April the 15th, and then I leave.
All right. Now, tell us about your Ford family. Do you all attend any particular church?
We go to the First United Methodist Church.
Okay.
Benton retired in 1975 after 15 years on the school board. He thought he had served enough time then.
Yes.
So now we don't get out of town much. We stay in. We love to play 42. We have a 42 tournament going with some friends.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. I do needlepoint. Benton plays a lot of tennis. And we just have a good time.
That is wonderful. Would you like to tell us about Grand Prairie during the time that you were growing up compared to now, and some of the wonderful changes that you have seen take place, and maybe some of the earth-shaking changes that you've seen in the growth patterns or anything about Grand Prairie?
Gosh, there's no comparison to, there were probably 1,800 people here when I was born, or maybe not that many, I don't know. But, we had Mr. Page's store downtown and one drugstore and maybe 2 grocery stores, and that was it. But when North American came, I think that was the beginning of the growth. And when I look out now at South Grand Prairie all the way out, several miles, and think of how it's grown, it amazes me. I just cannot believe that it's grown this much. And to see all the pretty schools, the big, beautiful buildings, it's just great. It really is.
What was it like to be the wife of not only a school board member for 15 years, but a gentleman that was president of the board and had all of these commitments and everything?
It was fine. Benton makes everything fine for me. We had the children at home. I stayed home with Janice and David. They were quite small then. But he's just the soothing influence in my life, and everything just went fine. There were many nights that he was out till 2 or 2:30 in the morning at board meetings.
Board meetings.
But I waited up for him. We had a glass of Coke or whatever, coffee. And he worked hard. He did a good job. I think he did. I may be a little bit prejudiced. But it was fun. All those years were fun.
All right. Now, are you into any other clubs or groups or service things in
Not
town
anymore.
other than your church?
Just our church, Not anymore.
That and 42, that'll take a lot
That and
of
42, that takes care of a lot of it. Yeah.
All right, that's wonderful. Now let's get back to Esther. Esther, we don't want to leave out anything about the Coles and you and your life in Grand Prairie. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the time when Mr. Tom was working in the service station? Were you still working in Dallas at that time? You were still working in Dallas?
Yes, I was.
So when you would come home, you'd stop off at the service station?
As a rule, I did, And he usually would work a little later, that is, you work longer hours in the service station. And he had several men working for him, and he didn't want to impose on them anytime, so he worked late some. And he would work on Sunday so many times so that they could go to church,
All right, now tell me this. When you all first married, where did you live in Grand Prairie?
We first lived up on College.
All right.
Up on College Street, and then we moved down to North Street. We were there for probably a year, and we built our house then down on the corner of Southeast 8th and Austin. And we lived there until about 1953. We moved out on Skyline Road, West Skyline Road, and I'm still there. And of course, Tom passed away in '59, and I'm still there.
All right, now tell me some of your neighbors down near the Austin area where you lived down there for so many years. Can you remember some of the good old neighbors that you had?
Well, my mother and father at that time, they had moved from the farm too, you know, and they lived up on the west end of Austin Street.
Good, good.
And I didn't know too many of the neighbors. I knew the Streetmans, an older family
All
here.
right.
They lived here for many years, and they were about a half a block, I guess, from us. And our closest neighbor was two English people. They were older people. She was a spinster, and she and her father lived in this house across the street. I thought I would never get to be neighbors with Miss Jenny because she was so shy. But she was the loveliest thing when I got to know her. Wasn't she sweet?
Yes, she was.
And what was Miss Jenny's last name? Do you
Nichols.
know? Miss Jenny Nichols.
Miss Jenny Nichols.
How
and
wonderful.
Her father was pretty old, and he was a smart man. He was a plumber by trade, and he was older too. He's retirement age, but they didn't have retirement then. He worked for himself, but he'd make his own tools to work with.
I remember.
And he had a little mushroom cellar under the house, and they were so interesting.
Oh, that sounds
They came
wonderful.
from England, you know, here. But she moved away then many years later. She moved away before we did. She moved to Appleton, Wisconsin with her sister.
All right.
And
Working in Dallas, it made it a little bit harder for you to know your neighbors, but your association with church and other things. Can you name some of what you all consider the influential people in town, people that really caused Grand Prairie to be better or to grow, or that Mr. Tom associated with in business? Anyone you would like to name drop?
well, yes, L.O. Turner and his brother, and some of the younger ones too, you know, like Durwood Sutton and
The Stufflebeans?
The Stufflebeans, yes, and Perry Nash, when Perry Nash was here. The Stufflebeans, and he knew all
He was
of
our
all-
police chief.
Yeah,
Perry Nash was the police chief.
from many years ago.
Yes.
And he knew most all of the younger men in the lodge, you know, in the Samuel Hamilton Lodge. He knew lots of them. He knew everybody in town, more than I did because I was out of town so much. He really knew everybody.
And of course, going to church, can you remember some of the ministers that you'd like to name drop in our history tape that worked with you all through the years that you remember?
Their names just don't come right quick. But
There was a Reverend Jones who was Irish. Do you remember him?
yeah.
And a Seymour, Reverend Seymour.
I can't remember. Let's see, what was his name that did Tom's service? They had moved away.
The Garretts?
No, not the Garretts. I know the Garretts.
Seymours.
Garretts and Seymour. And let's see, where do they live now? I can't think of his name. But he and Tom were just real good friends. He'd go down to the station and visit with him, you know. Tom would do little things for him, you know, in his car, on his car. No, I just cannot remember his name. Why
It's been a long time.
Of course, I remember Brother DeVore, you know, the one that
Yes.
died.
Oh, yes.
We're real good friends. And I went to Golden Wedding Anniversary. Margaret and now what was their last names? This summer I went to their Golden Wedding Anniversary up Plano. Richardson. Oh gosh, her name's Margaret. She was a real good friend of mine.
You'll think of it in a few minutes.
Probably.
Yeah, it'll go.
All right. Now, Esther, what I would like for you to do, what are you doing now that you've retired? We need to see what happens to we older people when we retire, and how do you
really
spend
go
your
to work.
days? You really go to work then. Tell us what you're
Oh
doing
well,
now.
I play a lot of bridge.
All right.
Belong to the Women's Club, and I play bridge over there a lot.
Yes.
And of course we have other activities over there too a lot. And I have belonged to some little bridge clubs. I enjoy playing bridge. I don't do a lot of hard exercise. I exercise a little just on my own. But I still sew just a little. I used to sew a lot.
Oh, you did. Tell us about your sewing ability. That's a good hobby.
When my sister Ruth and I were growing up, we made our own clothes.
You did.
And it seemed strange to me that when I worked, I would come home in the afternoon maybe and whip up a dress, have it almost finished, you know, that night. But I don't so much anymore.
But she cooks a mean cookie.
Yeah.
She bakes cookies for us and brings them to us.
I do some cooking,
Yeah.
not as much, you know, just for one person. But when I get in the mood to cook, I cook and take it out, like to Maureen and Benton and different people.
And now tell me, in the Bridge Club, I know that you have a lot of good fellowship there. Who are your favorite bridge partners? Or can you name those on television without getting into bad
Well,
trouble?
I can't name those at the Woman's Club because there's so many.
Yes, how you all swap around.
I might get in trouble. But I guess my favorites now are Zola Pennell and Edith Crane, and Joy Brown, Marie Stuffelbeam, and Thelma Dickey, and Ruby Miller, and bless her heart, she can't play anymore. And
Yes.
so Lola Mae Swadley, when she was here.
Yes.
I know you have a history of the Swadleys.
Yes, I do.
And Lola Mae is in Blanton Gardens now, Methodist retirement home in Dallas,
Yes, yes.
And, well, that's about all.
Wonderful.
This is too interesting.
All right.
I go, of course, to Eastern Star. I belong to the Eastern
wonderful.
Star.
Oh, good.
And I go to their meetings and things, and we have a past matrons and patrons club. We meet once a month, and I always go there.
All right.
And we meet in the homes, you know, and sometimes they meet with me.
Good. Maureen, I would like to ask you, now, since Uncle Scooter couldn't be with us today,
Okay.
would you give a little bit about his family, give his full name and his wife's name and any children that they have, so we'll have that part of the Eastons on our record.
It's R.A. Eason. He
All right.
married, help me,
Inez Taylor.
Inez Taylor, yeah.
All right.
Who was was born in Grand Prairie,
All
I think.
right.
And they have one daughter, Diane,
All right,
who is married to Jerry Fox.
all right.
And I think they have two grandsons, Aunt Esther?
Yeah, they have two sons.
They have two grandsons.
All right. Can you name their grandsons by any chance?
The youngest one.
Ronnie and Sammy. Okay.
Ronnie
and Sammy. I remember.
So we're
yeah.
going to get
Yeah.
Uncle Scooter's
We're gonna get him on
genealogy
here.
in
Yes,
here
uh-huh.
at least. Well, we're sorry that he couldn't be with us
Yes,
today.
I
That
am too.
we know that he has wonderful memories of Grand Prairie.
You
But
need
I'll
to
tell
get
you,
him on.
We can't beat Esther Cole Eason
You're
because she
right.
has been wonderful
Yes, she
today.
has.
I want to thank you both for coming today and being with us and bringing us the history of the Easons and the Coles, and particularly the Coles that live down in the Mountain Creek
area.
Basin. Oh, that is
Until the lake ran them out.
that was wonderful. And we hope that things will be beautiful and we can have you back even next year. Thank y'all for being with us.
Thank you. It was my
Thank you,
pleasure.
Ruthie. It
Wonderful.
was nice. Thank
y'all.
you.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.